today's panel is going to be on escrow process and what we do. But first off, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Vicky. I'm from Culture Escrow. I have been in the escrow industry for 10 years.
Good morning. How are you doing? I didn't speak this morning. I'm a little tired. It's been a long week, a short week, but a long week. Anyway, I'm very pleased to be here. I'm a member of this wonderful board. It's my favorite board of realtors in all of Southern California. I'm happy to be here. My name is Deanna Pope, and I've been in the escrow industry over 30 years.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alina Chu. I work with American Trust Escrow, and I've been doing escrow for over 30 years in the San Diego Valley.
Great, well, welcome this morning. I know we're a little bit short, little small group here today, but even better because everyone can ask their questions at the end of the panel. Let's start off with Vicky. Vicky, I get this question a lot. What do we need as escrow holders from the seller, if the seller's in the trust? What do we need from them?
Okay. If the seller is in a trust, if the seller is an original trustee or trustor, usually we don't need the full trust agreement. All we need is the first page that's showing the trust name, the signature page, and the notary page. But if the seller is under like a successor trustee, then we will need a full trust agreement for the title officer to review. And we will also need a trust certification that the seller would need to sign and notarize in front of the notary. And that's all we need for the trust. And also, I'm sorry, for a trust, please note, we cannot have power of attorney for holding as a trust. But if there's a special provision, then yes.
Also, sometimes it would show the powers of the trustee, right, to show that they have authorization. Also, too, you want to see that they have authorization to sell the property, that they're the ones. Okay, Alina, we, especially with the whole new changes coming up, what do we need? What are the new HOA civil code requirements, and what can we do to expedite that process? Because sometimes it takes a really long time.
Yes, the new car contract has been changed, and on there, the new provision calls for the sellers to be responsible to furnish all the HOA documents. Before it used to be an option, but if you look at the new contract, it's automatically defaulted now that the sellers are responsible to furnish these documents, and these documents will include the bylaws, the CCNRs, the articles, all these documents, the special budgets, the special assessments, any violations, any minutes. So all these documents are what the sellers is responsible to give to the buyers. Now what you could do is, you can have your sellers, when taking the listing, you can have your sellers contact the HOA. If they contact the HOA themselves, they can sometimes get these documents for free. Otherwise, if you instruct escrow to order it, the fee can go pretty much considered very high. You can go up to a few $100s to even up to $300.
I've seen it at 5 too.
Yes, and lately for this couple of years it's been extremely high. So if you can have your sellers call the association directly, they can even get it for free. Now to expedite it, what we normally do nowadays is to ask for the sellers to provide us with a credit card information, because a lot of these HOA fees needs to be paid up front. So in order to expedite that, if you can prepare them in advance, collect the information for the credit card, and have that readily available so we can place the order for the HOA documents or the HOA demand. Now, the only other fee that the buyers can pay for will be for the HOA certification. If the buyer is obtaining a loan, most lenders will require an HOA cert, at which time this is the fee that you can pass along to the buyers to pay.
But the contract is negotiable, right? So the buyer can take responsibility to if they wanted to pay?
It's a civil code that the sellers is responsible to provide these documents.
Okay.
So it is seller's responsibility.
Okay, and everyone keep in mind that there's a time limit too, that they have up until,
To provide the document?
no, the HOA, yeah, the HOA has a certain time frame that they can provide the documents.
Well, usually, we have to, you need to request for earlier, because they do something takes up to 10 days. So, and then by the time you open escrow, sign escrow, get instruction back to escrow, you already lost a week's time, and by the time we place it, it's already 10 days into the escrow, and the lenders probably want to get the loan approved in 15 days, you're really, really short for time. So that really usually is a big lag on the escrow period, so you do usually fall off when it's a condominium, because the HOA usually
Right.
takes a long time to obtain.
Yes, I think she has a good point, is prepare your sellers ahead of time. Have them contact the HOA, have them be aware of what the fees are involved, that way you're not wasting any time. Okay, let's go back to Vicki real quick. Can a seller cancel an escrow transaction after escrow has been opened?
Can a seller cancel escrow after escrow has been open? No. Normally, buyers have a 21-day loan contingency, 17 days appraisal and inspections and contingency, and buyer can cancel within those kind of contingency period, but not for seller. If the purchase contract, everything signed correctly, and buyer move on, and everything go well, seller have no ground to cancel. For example, I have a transaction just closed a few days ago. This transaction took me like 7 months to finish. After it's in escrow and seller want to back out, and the buyer say, no, I'm not backing out. I'm not going to let you go. So the seller tried all possible, and he even said the purchase, the signature on the purchase contract was forged. And the buyer said, And the buyer have to find like 2 attorneys sending letter to the seller, instruct him to move on. And one of the attorneys said, in the letter said, okay, if you want to move on, everything you sign needs to be notarized, including the purchase agreement. And if you don't move on, they're gonna put this pendant in the property, and the seller cannot sell to other buyer. So actually, this is, and then end up, the seller have to surrender and close escrow.
Okay, well, Deanna, this question's for you then. I know this has happened a few times when somebody wants to cancel, and so in the interim, they open up a new escrow. Can escrow open up a second escrow at the same property with a new buyer if the first is still pending cancellation?
The answer is yes. The key word here is full disclosure. Full disclosure, and that's probably why you would want to open up the escrow at the same escrow company, besides the fact that we've done all the work, right? But the second escrow would be contingent upon the first escrow canceling. And you may say, well, what happens if the first one doesn't cancel and you're down to the end of the second escrow and it's ready to close? The buyer of the second escrow can waive the contingency that the first one must cancel if they want to close the second one. But it all boils down to what was the intent of the first buyer. If the first buyer was like the buyer in Vicky's escrow that closed after 7 months, they were intent on closing, then that would put, obviously, buyer 2 in a precarious position. But if buyer 1 canceled, and they're disputing the deposit, and that's really the only reason that escrow 1 has not canceled, because they're disputing the seller wants the buyer's deposit, then buyer number 2 certainly could waive that contingency and move forward and close escrow number 2. And that's what we typically see happen, at least I do, is that we close number 2 and waive the contingency if it hasn't canceled.
Any other input from anyone here?
I can add to that. I had a transaction that happened also, but the attorney recommended that we prepare cancellation instructions saying that they just agree to cancel, but to set aside the time frame to discuss the fees later on, so they can dispute that. So, but at least we have some type of confirmation that the intent is to cancel. So that way the second escrow could be a little bit more at ease to close.
Okay, good, okay. Now let's go back to you real quick. If the seller wants the buyer to pre-release money to them prior to the close of escrow, is that money automatically non-refundable?
The answer is no. There's no such thing as non-refundable, meaning that you may have a seller that says, I'm willing to, for example, extend the close of escrow for 30 days. However, I want the buyer to release $5,000 to me in good faith that they will close in another 30 days, and that money is non-refundable. The only person that can determine whether it's refundable or non-refundable is the court of law. And it would have to go to a judge, and then they would say whether it was or it wasn't. We had one transaction where it was a multi-million-dollar home, and it was a developer, a builder that had built it, and the home was almost finished, and the buyer wanted some modifications to it. So the seller requested or required $400,000 pre-released up front to make those modifications. And when it canceled, the seller kept the $400,000 and felt entitled to. Well, it went to court, and the seller ended up having to pay back the buyer $180,000 of it. So you just never know. But when we get those instructions, we prepare instructions to pre-release funds, but we just call it, we don't call it non-refundable because we can't make that determination whether it is or whether it isn't.
So are you saying even if the buyer and seller agree to it being non-refundable?
Yeah, because it doesn't matter. I mean, if it goes to court, it'll be the judge that determines that, not the seller or the buyer.
I disagree with that one.
Well, she had a case, so I think we all have certain ways, so we'll look into that one more. Let's see. Alina, what can we do to protect this consumer from wire fraud?
Well, unfortunately, you all know we are being hacked every day, whether we know it or not. But there's people monitoring web, emails and such. And this story I'm going to tell you happened to our office. We had a regular transaction. We emailed the wire instructions to the agent, and the agent forwarded this email to the buyer, and the buyer was having issues because they wanted to give us a cashier's check. So they called to the office, and we were able to explain to them the reason why we require wire. So at the end, the buyer said, okay, fine, we'll send that wire and we'll send it to Wells Fargo. And we said, our bank is not Wells Fargo. We're not banking with Wells Fargo. He said, yeah, I'm looking at this paper, and the paper says Wells Fargo. And then we realized finally that she was looking at a different paper than what we were sending. It looked exactly the same, except the name of the bank information and the creditor's name was modified. So luckily for us that the customer called to verify, and we were able to catch it before it actually happened, okay? And another incident that, we go to the Escrow Association forum, Escrow Association, and we also heard the stories because we always keep each other abreast of what's going on. And another story that happened was the seller's proceeds. The escrow officer was in conversation with the sellers. They had emails going back and forth. The seller at the end emailed us their wire instructions. And right after we received the email, the seller called into the escrow officer and said, oh, by the way, I just sent you wire instructions, but I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to send you a different email to confirm it. So delete that email. I'll send you a second one. The second email came in. It had the same name. It has very slight change to the email. It either had an extra number, or it was Gmail or Ymail or something minor that you would not have you could easily overlook. And that second wire came in with different wire instructions. And I believe those funds did did go out. Yeah, but I believe that they were able to catch it somehow, and I believe that the bank was able to help them retrieve that money. But that was very scary because the money did actually leave the office, leave the bank, but the bank was able to help them to retrieve it because they knew there was a fraudulent wire. Somehow they were able to recapture the money, but that's just, you know,
So
you never know.
So what can we do to prevent that?
Well, nowadays, you've been seeing a lot of emails being sent out encrypted. Okay, so a lot of agents are still, and a lot of, oh, why are you sending encrypted emails? They don't like it, they're complaining, there's password. But the reason for those encrypted emails is because we have to go a step further to protect the consumer. So first of all, we encrypt the emails. And second of all, for all of us, whenever we have wire instructions, we're gonna have to go a step further and call in and verify the wire instructions. So either you can call in for your customer, we have to go an extra step and call. We have to also make an extra step to call you and let you know, we're sending you wire instructions, we're sending it encrypted. Please call us to verify the information. And so what we're trying to do is do that on the phone, and you can do that as well. You can call the Escrow company, verify the information, and that's the only way that we can prevent this fraud happening in our daily activities.
Anyone else want to interject here?
We require every escrow officer to call every seller that we're wiring out to and every buyer that's wiring in. You have to pick up the phone and call and just confirm the information because it's so easily that it can be hacked, and email is just, if it's not secure, it's just really untrustworthy.
Yeah, just if I can interject a little bit, we've been hearing these stories more and more and more in the escrow industry. And even if our emails are encrypted, if we send it to the agent and the agent forwards it and to their client and their email's not encrypted, that's where something can happen. I've also heard of a case where the client wired the closing funds before loan docs. And then found out, wait, what's going on, what happened? And the client told the agent, well, you sent me the wire instructions. The agent never sent it, but they hacked into the agent's email. And they didn't even know. So it's in court, I think.
Yeah, we had a couple of incidents also. One was a real estate agent. We were going to wire their commission. It was $8,000. It was in December, and they said they were on holiday in London. And would we do an international wire? So that's your first red flag, right? And the escrow officer and the agent went back and forth in email 3 times and said, no, we only send domestic wires. They finally sent over domestic wire instructions, and the escrow officer sent the wire, but it got kicked back because the names didn't match the account, so we got lucky. And when we finally picked up the phone and called the agent, she goes, what do you mean I'm in London? No, I'm here. What are you talking about? And it was her AOL account that had gotten hacked. We had another one with a buyer who lost $69,000 from, we had emailed him our wire instructions, and his money was coming from Merrill Lynch. So he forwarded the wire instructions to Merrill Lynch. He said, no, you don't have to do it. I'll do it because you sent them to me already. And he forwarded them to Merrill Lynch. That email got intercepted, and his money went to a different bank. Didn't come to us.
So let us forward it to the client directly if it's encrypted, and then we'll verify. We'll verify with the customer, the routing number, the name, all that. Best to do it that way. Okay, well, while we're on the subject of funds, Deanna, the sellers gain divorce and they instruct you that proceeds are to be split 50-50. They're getting divorced. Husband and wife want to split it, but the wife's to receive $5,000 more than the husband. How would you word that? How would you do that?
Well, this actually also happened to us, and the real estate purchase agreement said escrow holder is instructed to split seller's proceeds 50-50, and Mrs. Seller is to receive $5,000 more than Mr. Seller. It's funny how they negotiate. Don't you love divorces and death? It really keeps us in business if you think about it. Some people really like divorce because you sell the couple the home and then they get divorced and you get that listing plus 2 more. You know, I mean, it's like a multiple deal. Make a lot of money off of it, right? Well, anyway, so the wife is to get 5,000 more. And that, as I read, was how it was read or stated in the contract. Well, real easy math, if the proceeds is $100,000 and you split it 50-50, you've got $50,000 each, right? If you take 5,000 from the husband and give it to the wife, you now have 45,000 on the husband's side, right? And what do you have on the wife's side? 55,000. So what does that look like to the husband? 10,000 more, right? So to be exact or complete, you would have to go on to say that after escrow holder splits the proceeds 50-50, escrow holder will debit Mr. Seller $2,500 and credit Mrs. Seller $2,500 to make it look like $47,500 and $52,500. So just something to be careful of.
Okay.
I have examples of this if you'd like to take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, so, Matt,
Yeah.
are you a teacher?
No.
Oh. You're good with numbers, though.
Okay, Mickey, when we close, it used to be, the seller doesn't want the or the buyer doesn't want the purchase price to, you want to hide the purchase price through escrow. How would we do that? Can you do that?
Prior to 2015, yes, we can hide the transfer tax on the deed, and then we just attach a separate piece of paper, paper to the deed and record, and then the people cannot tell like how much is the purchase price. They can use the transfer tax to calculate the purchase price, but now 2015 no longer available. We cannot hide. Everything has to show on the deed.
For public? Yep, okay. And Alina, what can we do to prevent loan docs being redrawn at the last minute?
Yes, unfortunately, it happens all the time, and all these years we have not been able to prevent that. And that is something that it can be done fairly simple. All you have to do is, as an agent, at the very beginning, just when you write the offer and you're writing an offer for your buyer, just look at their ID. Double check their name on their ID, because nowadays notaries can no longer notarize if they don't have a valid ID. That name has to match. I mean, I just had a transaction for the closing of this month. The offer was written, no one interjected to say that the name was incorrect. That actually the wife changed her name. When she got naturalized, she went back to her maiden name. And of course, everybody knows her as Mr. and Mrs. So the contract was written with the husband's last name on there. But when we came down to actually signing the actual loan documents, there was no ID to match, and she said, well, I no longer go by the name. She has already changed all her IDs. She had no valid ID with her old name anymore. So, and we asked her, what would you like to use? And she said, no, I have changed my name officially, and this is my name. But if you look at her ID from the very beginning, then you would know for sure that you will have instructions, and you'll be able to sign them with the name at the time of signing loan documents. So we had to, of course, reschedule the appointment, redraw documents, and it happens all the time, but it's still happening to today that docs are being redrawn because the names don't match. So if you could just do that at the very beginning, that would help us a lot.
Yeah, very good, especially with the new changes coming up. You want to make sure that you have the correct person. Their ID matches, it's valid. If they're married, if they're not, that person's going to be on the loan or not, because it's going to delay your escrow even more. But anyone else want to comment here before we go to questions? No? Okay.